Well, good day, dear listeners and dear viewers, and welcome to another episode of the unseen process of recruiting, what happens after you click submit. Today, we have the pleasure of having another guest, right? An expert in his field, Mr. Sean Brett, Senior Recruiter in Business Development at ACG. Hi, Sean.
How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much. And of course, we have the gracious and ever present Greg Edlin. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well, Michelle. And yourself?
I'm doing really well. Today's a sunny day. It's beautiful. We're here. Let's get down to business. It has been a year, right? Almost a year to the day that the pandemic has started. And there has been, what a year it has been, right, Greg? Right, Sean? We're going to take the next 10, 15 minutes just to talk about what transpired then, what's occurring now. And Sean's going to give us his perspective on how to make sure you put your best foot forward. So, gentlemen, let's just start. A year ago, it was a no man's land. I'd have to say I didn't even expect it to be as catastrophic as it has been on many different levels. But professionally speaking, it sure took a toll on certain sectors, right?
Yeah, I mean, a year later, it was a year ago, I should say. It was no man's land, to your point. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, both business and even personally for people. I think from a business standpoint, companies didn't know they were going to be open today, a year later, or what they were going to do, what it looked like. And I think there was two schools of thought of this is going to be a quick couple of weeks and we get through it. And I think a lot of companies, took that approach. And then a lot of other companies realize this may be a long-term thing and they have to be set up for it. So and those are the ones that lasted. So Sean deals a lot with the candidates, so he's definitely seen, I think, the change in sentiment from a year ago on a candidate looking for a job to a candidate now looking for a job.
Absolutely.
That we're trying to pitch. So what do you feel, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, to both the points, it was just so much unknown when this first happened. We didn't know, candidates didn't know, employers didn't know. So a lot of unknown. And then in the beginning, when it first happened, it was, I don't want to say, it was pretty radio silent. I mean, we weren't even hearing from really candidates because everybody was very concerned with personal life, trying to get their orders dealt with first. And then slowly people would check in. And then the unfortunate trend of losing, they lost their jobs and lost positions, and checking in to see if we had things. And Greg, I would say it wasn't completely dead. We had things here or there, but it took a couple months. We probably lost about half a year, I'd say, last year. Yeah, and then slowly it started to open up, and I know we got very busy towards the end of last year. Candidates were checking in like crazy. We were doing our best to get in touch with them about positions. And the difference now, I would say, and me and Greg spoke about this, it's definitely more of a candidate market right now, where maybe we were getting, even 2 months ago, a bunch of calls from candidates about, hey, do you guys have anything? To now the point of we're reaching out to a lot of different candidates and not hearing back as much. I don't know. And that's the trend I'm starting to see.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah, we're starting to see the trend that the candidates are holding the market right now. It's taking a lot more persuasion, and I think a couple of things. I think the candidates that are working right now have confidence in their employers. They're secure. They lasted a year with their employer through probably the roughest time in history. So you really got to make it appealing on to why they should look somewhere else. I think the fact that we're a year into this, there's other aspects that came into it. We're working from home. A lot more people are working from home. And now what we're starting to see are the callbacks to the office, hey, people are getting vaccinated, things are opening up, you can start working from an office. And that's really the biggest drive right now of why I think I'm seeing candidates looking for a role. They don't want to go back to the office. They work from home for a year or 9 months or whatever it may be. And they feel a lot better about themselves doing it that way.
So okay, this is really interesting because there's a lot of folks out there who have lost their jobs and are currently looking to get back into the game. So to hear that there are candidates out there, that are individuals out there, passive candidates, right? Individuals that are not actively looking for a role, that are around but need to be convinced is interesting. Here's a question for both of you. What the perception is, and I've heard this as a career coach, Michele, there's a lot more people out there looking for a job, which means there's more competition. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's going to go to the industry. I mean, we're speaking right now. A bulk of the flow of candidates and companies that we've worked with, they've been in the essential services. They've been the insurance companies. They've been anything under financial services. They've been providers to retailers and e-commerce and grocery stores. They've been manufacturing, things that were affected, but maybe not to that degree. Again, COVID affected every single industry around. There's no doubt. Whether you were a bank, you had to shift your staff, or you were the cruise line and you had to lay off all your employees because the cruise ships aren't operating.
Right.
So I think it's going to go down to who you're asking. If you're asking someone that's in the hospitality industry, it's competitive. A lot of hospitality still hasn't opened up. But then again, you have states like Texas and Mississippi where it's business as usual and people are now, willing to go vacation there. Florida.
Right.
So the hospitality industries in certain states are opening up. And I think if you ask someone in hospitality in New Jersey versus someone in hospitality in Florida,
very different
views.
Yeah, it's definitely situational. It's definitely industry based. Yeah, that definitely different down somewhere like just I'm sure Florida compared to, I'm in Jersey. It's interesting though, Greg's in New York and I'm in Jersey, and even that distance, not that far, but you still see a difference.
Yeah. Sure.
Even that short distance.
Right. In New York, go from the city to upstate, it's a difference.
Way different. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, Sean. It is definitely situational. So what do you tell someone how do you convince someone out there that's listening, maybe this is a good time to change industries? What would you tell them?
Yeah, again, situational job, depending on the job and the benefit, but, to someone that might be a little hesitant, we completely completely understand. We get it. If you have a job right now and you feel secure, that's understandable. But, we speak to the opportunity, we speak to what our clients offer, and that the opportunity we're presenting is a good or great opportunity for them. Try to figure out what they're looking for, what they need. If they're having a conversation with us, whether they're a little bit passive or not, there's probably a reason. We try to hone in on what the reason they're looking is, and then address that. And, if it's, there's not too much growth in this position, or, I kind of just changed the scenery. It's kind of run its course, but I'm comfortable. So I don't want to, comfortability can be a little bit dangerous as well. And sometimes you got to take that leap of faith, but yeah, we try to figure out what they're looking for, what their concerns are maybe at their current position, and what we can offer them basically.
And, to your point, Michele, it's probably, if they're not working now, I'd probably say it's a good time to start exploring other industries, because you may be a year out already. And I know we always have these conversations, the skills that they may have, or I don't want to say diminishing, but they're not as up to date as someone that may be working on a different system right now, or has been doing the daily flow and has worked remote and worked in the office, or vice versa. So I'd probably say it's like a now or never type of thing, because the longer this is going on, the higher risk there is of going up against these companies and these passive candidates that are a little more selective and seem to be on a lot of companies' radars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Regardless of whether you're a passive candidate or an active candidate, regardless of whether you're currently employed or not employed, Greg emphasized a great point, made a great point, which is, make every effort to stay relevant in your field, and also consider training, right? Self-training, taking courses,
yeah,
right?
Good time to do it.
Exactly, Sean, right? This is important, because, right, we're talking about from a career coaching perspective, it's imperative that the client is staying fresh, right? I say this a lot, staying current in terms of their knowledge. From a recruiter perspective, right, it makes it easier for them to pitch you, right, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's important to keep in mind the value of time too for people. I think a lot of stuff that we've seen are people getting lost on unemployment right now, that they're making a
Yes.
lot of money on unemployment, and
Yes.
some of these jobs aren't paying as much as maybe unemployment is right now, but that's temporary. And that time that someone's spending on unemployment, it's not helping them. It's there to support them. It's not there to better them.
Right.
It's there to help them out. So I think it's great to keep that in mind. That right now as we mentioned, it's a candidate's market. It's hard for companies to get good talent. So this may be the chance for some candidates that are looking, that may not have 100% of the skills match, to try to get in and take that leap of faith on a new opportunity or a new career, or it may not be 100% what they're making, it may be a little bit less, but you're working and it's getting you up to date and may open up a lot of other doors. I see it oftentimes on the temporary opportunities we have.
Yes.
Well, I'm on a temp job, I'm on unemployment. Okay, why? Well, because I want a full-time job. Okay, that temp job could turn into the full-time job. That person that you're covering that went on maternity may decide they like staying home more with their kids than working, or that person that's out on disability may not be able to come back to work, and you're doing the job. Who's going to get it? So I think that's probably the biggest sentiment that I've seen, that this unemployment that we're competing with is, the end all for a lot of people. And now we're going into the summer months soon, and people are going to say, well, I'm getting paid to stay home.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. I mean, Greg highlighted something that's real. And, of course, we don't want to, how can I say, diminish the responsibilities that any listener or watcher has to deal with, right? Keeping in mind, they want to keep the money flowing, right? So we don't want to alienate anyone. But the reality is that unemployment will eventually run out. And the goal here is how to make sure that you put your best foot forward. Sean, let me ask you a question. With the candidates that you deal with, right? How do you handle those that have been out of the game for a minute?
Sure. Well, I wanted to make a point to Greg's thing as well. And, he was talking about the big thing with the, being out currently or because of COVID and maybe the unemployment, try to look bigger picture. Like he said, it's ending soon. Even if you take that temp job and you pick up a new skill, it does, maybe that temp job doesn't become that permanent job, but it could lead to something else. So it's always good to get into that kind of stuff. I just wanted to make that point on Greg.
Unemployment.
Yeah.
You left off.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, the question you had for me.
It's how do you work with clients that have just come from who are just experiencing a professional gap, right?
Yeah,
right.
Candidates that have been out of work. What do we
do? Yeah, I mean,
6 months ago, 5 months ago, and now they're looking to get back in the game.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I try to, majority of them, a high percentage is because of COVID. So out of their control. So I try to reiterate that. I try to kind of comfort them in that sense that it's, it is unfortunate, but clients are going to be understanding to that.
Yeah.
They're going to understand that what happened is the reason they were out of work. I get that it could be scary to have that gap in a resume. You don't ever want to be out of work. And we deal with clients that don't like gaps in resumes, but we're making sure we understand why, and especially if it is because of COVID, they're very understanding of it. So we try to put them at ease, basically.
Yeah, Sean, I think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and to Sean's point on that, I think one of the things for these candidates to realize too is the gap due to COVID right now is still a standard and excusable. The further out we go, that reason for that gap may diminish too. And I hate to say it like that or sound like that, but you're seeing it now. A lot of people are out of work. Their resumes do have that gap, March 2020, April 2020 to present, they're not working. But as we go further out and people are returning to work and you're still being overly selective and you may still be out of work because you're scared to take that chance on something new, or you're comfortable right now waiting for that best opportunity and maybe you are collecting unemployment, that 6 months from now, companies may look at it and say, well, the pandemic started March 2020, and we're now in, December 2021.
Right.
Why are they still out of work? Why are they not looking at anything that came up?
The understanding may diminish.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point, gentlemen. Two important points here, just to emphasize. The longer you wait to get back into the game, the more challenging it's going to be. Also, while you're experiencing that gap, make it work for you, right?
Yes.
Determine how you can further your education through free courses online, right? Or taking up a temporary position. As Sean alluded here, the temporary position doesn't have to be permanent, but you can also acquire additional skills that maybe you didn't consider before. So the point here is how to put your best foot forward. With 2 minutes left, what further observations are you both noticing? I'll start with Sean.
Just as far as a candidate clients, just the market in general.
Yes.
It does seem that right now that certain industries are hotter than others.
Okay.
It's probably some of the ones Greg mentioned that didn't necessarily take as big a hit. And then we are starting to see that it's going from clients open to fully remote to now it's kind of switching a little bit to hybrid, Greg, if you notice it. And some employers are trying to get an idea of when they'd like to be in the office. Now it's so hard to tell, but the discussion is coming up. So you're seeing a little bit of a shift back to maybe somewhat of what it was like.
Well, Greg, I think we should have Sean to come back and tell us about these hot industries and suggestions that he may have. What do you think?
I'm always open for it.
All right, Sean, do you have time to come back? I know you're uber busy, but.
Always, I'll make time.
Okay, so part 2 next week, dear listeners and viewers, where we'll talk about the hot industries and suggestions on how you can get your best foot forward. Greg, Sean, before we close, anything else?
Yeah,
good.
All right. Thank you, dear listeners. Thank you, dear viewers. Sean, Greg, don't go anywhere until next week.